You can start when you're ready.
All right, well, it's the noon hour, so it's the right time to get started with this NISS Virtual Government Career Fair. My name's Nathan Cruz. I'm a mathematical statistician at USDA's National Ag Statistics Service, and I'll be moderating this event. Just a couple things in a matter of logistics. We thank Glenn Johnson and James Rosenberger of NISS for hosting this event and giving us an opportunity to showcase some of the opportunities that are here in the Federal Statistical Service. We encourage your participation, so please submit questions through the Q&A feature, and as the opportunity arises, we'll try and address those questions or circle back at the end of the session to address those questions. Just a note about the Zoom settings here. When you have a speaker sharing a screen, you can minimize the video display just by clicking that dash icon. And also be sure to look for a invitation to evaluate the session. Along with that, you'll get a link to the recordings of the session and links to the presentation materials as well. Just in brief, our schedule will start with Wendy Martinez of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Then we'll hear from Jonah Wong about opportunities at the Census Bureau. And my colleague Jeff Bailey will talk about some of the opportunities for us at National Agricultural Statistics Service. We'll try and take questions along the way or come back for a question and answer session at the end of the hour here. And once again, I'm Nathan Cruz of USDA NASS. Just to set the tone, Wendy is the president of the American Statistical Association. This year's theme for JSM was Everyone Counts, Data for the Public Good. And that's an important part of our mission in the Federal Statistical Service. And it takes a really strong skill set to deliver high quality data products. I'm sharing a screen grab of a response to an information request by the Wright brothers. Wilbur Wright had inquired about the winds of Kitty Hawk and got a response that it was favorable to conduct the experiments there. And as they say, the rest is history. So let me stop sharing the screen here and turn the floor over to Wendy Martinez of Bureau of Labor Statistics.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so here's my first test, which is to share my screen. Oops, oh, down here. So while I'm fiddling around, Nathan, how did that letter go to NASS, Agriculture?
No, it was sent to the, at the time, the U.S. Weather Bureau, but it apparently had some connection to U.S. Department of Agriculture on the letterhead there.
Okay, I was kind of wondering why they would ask Agriculture about weather. Oops, should have reset my slides here. All right, so you can see the slides okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, I think, oops, let me get my timer started here. Sorry. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here today for this career fair. I got to thinking that it's a good time, I think, to have something like this because it's the start of a new year, and I'm sure all the students out there are, looking towards their graduation and hopefully looking for jobs. So as Nathan said, I'm at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I work in the Mathematical Statistics Research Center in the Office of Survey Methods Research. And we pretty much support all of our programs and surveys here at the BLS with kind of basic research to improve our estimates, both our estimates of the statistics as well as the associated error or variances. So I'm starting off with this list of principal federal statistical agencies. And you might ask, well, why am I showing this? Well, I like to show it because it gives you an indication of the different areas in which you could work. And so as statisticians and data scientists, you might consider working at one of these agencies. And as you can see, it covers a lot of different areas. So we have economics, demographics, transportation, crime, income, and so forth. So there's a lot of different areas for you to work in. But I don't want you to think, kind of be constrained by these agencies. These are, statistical agencies, so of course they could use statisticians and data scientists, but there's other parts of the government too, like the Department of Defense. I spent many years working in the Defense Department, and they're always looking for good people. So hopefully you'll consider that. There's also the CIA and HHS, Environmental Protection Agency, and others. So, don't limit yourself. There's a lot of options out there for you. So here's the mission of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We collect economic data, publish statistics to help both the public and private in their making decisions. This is kind of, I think, in keeping with the letter that Nathan wrote, that we do provide information to the public. We are an independent statistical agency, as are all of the federal statistical agencies that I listed there. And that's really important because what we do has to be objective, open, and so forth. So that's key to what we all do. And I'm sure you'll hear about that from the other speakers also. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics it resides in the Department of Labor. And so we help provide key economic data on employment, unemployment. And in fact, we are responsible for the monthly unemployment and our employment numbers, unemployment rate, and how many jobs have been created and so forth. So every month that comes out. We also do the Consumer Price Index, which is very important for wages and inflation and so forth. We also look at what does it cost for a company to have an employee. So we look at compensation and working conditions, and also in particular how accidents and illnesses happen to people. So workplace safety is also important. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what is the type of what, as a statistician or data scientist, what might I be doing in my job? And I don't think there's one particular task that you might do. I think there's a lot of different things that you could tackle. And I think it depends on the agency. We'll hear, I'm sure, about the different types of work done from the other speakers and the other agencies. I think the needs of the group or the team that you're on. But really, I think, at least I tell my people, a lot of it depends on what you want to do, because oftentimes you bring your own skills and knowledge to the job, and you could help others at the agency understand what are some of the new and exciting things that you know about, and that you could help your agency innovate. So I think you do have a lot of ability to, and opportunities, I guess, to kind of bring your own skills and be innovative. Here's some of the typical career jobs that you could have as a statistician in the federal government. And I like to point this out because when you go to search for a job, sometimes you might just say, statistician or mathematical statistician, but that really limits you in what you could apply for and do. So as social scientist, psychologist, economist, as a statistician, you could potentially work in one of those areas, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Many of you probably haven't thought about operations research. As a statistician, you would qualify potentially for a job there too. There's also engineering, IT. I actually started out my career in the federal government as an engineer. So, and then converted to a statistician, but I did that really without even having further training. So it really just depends on, what you've done in your coursework. And there are entry-level jobs available, whether it's a bachelor's or master's, PhD. So there's plenty of opportunities there. All right, so one of the things I really wanted to do with the presentation is to kind of give you some resources so that you could find out what's the, what are your options. And I like to point out here to people that you should go to the OPM website, the Office of Personnel Management. They have information on the different types of careers, the series, I guess it's a series label or number that corresponds to that career. But most importantly, the qualifications, because that I think will sort of drive what you do in terms of searching for a job. For example, whether you would look for a social scientist job or economist or what have you. So I think these slides will be available for you later. So here's some links. OPM is a site that has information about pay and benefits, the careers, as I said, the qualifications. So that's a really good resource for you to in your job search. So this is an example of the qualifications for a mathematical statistician. I guess the code, numerical code for a mathematical statistician job or career is 1529. That's the series. And that's important because when you go to do your searches for jobs on USA Jobs, I'll come to that in a minute, this will be helpful for you. And I think here on the OPM site, you could get the other series numbers for these other jobs that you might be interested in or careers. So the point that I really want to make here is that the qualifications are shown here, that to be a mathematical statistician, you have to have a degree, but it doesn't say whether you have to have a degree in statistics or data science. It just says you have to have 24 semester hours of mathematics and statistics, of which at least 12 hours are in mathematics and 6 are in statistics. So you could really have a degree maybe in economics, and depending on what courses you took, you could qualify as a mathematical statistician. So this is why I think it's key to really go to the website here at OPM to find out what are the qualifications you need to have to, to apply for one of these jobs. Let's see, I guess that's all I want to say there. Of course, we all are interested in salaries. I liked Nathan's introduction about data for the public good because I think we are here for, we work for the government primarily because our objective is to serve the public. It's not to make money or profit, but it's to serve others. But we are still interested in money because we have usually families to support, so that's important. You can get the salary tables, information about benefits and so forth at OPM. And also I'll just point out, you'll see that on once you look at the tables, but there's also different tables for, depending on what location you'll be working in. So there's also, differences in the salaries based on that. All right. The federal government is really stresses the importance of work-life balance. And these are just some of the things that you might have. I do have to stress that some of these depend on the agency and the area, but everybody has the same sort of holiday and leave benefits. Most agencies have flexible work schedules. Often you have the opportunity to telework. Of course, that depends on the job and your tasks and so forth, and maybe how long you've been there. There's, in the DC area, there's a transit subsidy that helps with commuting costs. Also, there's educational opportunities. I know here at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's very important, the continuing education of our employees, so that's important. And then there's, of course, retirement. Now, I said OPM is the entry point for everything you need to know about, pay and benefits and so forth. But to apply for a federal job, there's really one site to do that, which I think is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about where to go, and that's usajobs.gov. And here is a screen capture of it and a link. So it's just usajobs.gov. There's some tabs here at the top, and if you click on this Explore Opportunities, it gives you some information at first about what are some of the priority urgent jobs that they need to fill. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll get to this area. And I think this is very useful because it's got information about whether, like special programs, executive service, if you're a former employee or a student or what have you. So take a look at those and you'll get some good information there. Job announcements are open to either the or status or special kind of situations, like maybe former government employees or current employees. Most of you as students are probably fall into the first category, which is the public or all US citizens. And this I'll just point out here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but anyway, on the right-hand side of the page, it tells you the who can apply. This one I think is just for the public. Here's an overview of the job posting, and this is for a mathematical statistician. But this is just a little piece of the job announcement, but all the information you need to apply for the job is there, including the skills, knowledge, qualifications, and so forth. Let's see, if you click on that middle tab, you get to the application process. I'm going to try to finish quickly here because I want to get to some tips. You can create an account in USA Jobs and do some searches. You can create searches and save them, but my advice here is don't necessarily rely on those saved searches. Be very proactive and keep searching. Don't give up. And also, it's my experience as a hiring manager that even though you might have a resume loaded up in USA Jobs, hiring managers don't usually go and search USA Jobs for resumes. So you have to be very proactive at searching for a job. In terms of the resumes, don't limit your resume length. I know the idea is you're always told 2 pages, but if you're applying for a federal job, don't limit yourself to 2 pages. You don't have to be excessively wordy, but go ahead and give enough explanation so people know what it is that your background. Because the key thing here is the last bullet. Somebody from Human Resources is going to look at your resume and make sure you're qualified. So the hiring manager won't even get to see your resume until it's gone through the HR screening, which means you need to be very clear to somebody in HR, who's not a statistician, by the way, about your capabilities so that they know that you're qualified. So don't worry about fitting it to 2 pages. In terms of, like I said, be persistent, keep looking, be open to different agencies, locations, careers. Sometimes positions have multiple announcements. Apply to all of them. And there's different GS levels like 12, 13, 14, 11. Go ahead and apply to all of them if you think that you qualify. And just pay special attention to the qualifications and then what documents are required. All right, and I think I went 1 minute over, so I'm going to quit. Should I stop sharing?
Yeah, you can stop sharing now. And thank you, Wendy, for that. I think in the interest of time, we're going to go now to Jonah Wong of the Census Bureau. Jonah, do you ever get tired of people asking if you only go to work once every 10 years?
Yeah, the other 9 years we just take a nap, and then that 1 year we work. We do have lots of questions for that. I'll start my sharing if I can find it. All right, so here we are. All right, there we go. So we don't only do the decennial, of course. The Census Bureau's mission is to provide quality data gathered from everywhere. I mean, essentially, we just count things, people and economies, and we specialize in collecting data. And we offer it to just about all the federal agencies, any agency, federal agency. The little secret is, the census collects the data for agencies and contracts out for that reason. So, why would you want to come work for Census? We mainly have 3 production areas that takes all the data that our field operations collects, and within our various programs, decennial, of course, is the big one. We also have an economic census that we run every 5 years, and we have hundreds of demographic and economic surveys that we run continuously, as well as the American Community Survey, which is a supplement to our decennial information. And then we also have a research and methodology area that studies problems and in working with the different methodology that we use for everything from collecting the data to analyzing the data at the end and publishing it. So as a statistician or someone involved with statistics, these are the areas that employ statisticians. The lighter red is, folks who employ, not as their main job, but they do utilize statisticians and other skilled labor. So as Wendy was saying, the 2 main job series that we use on the left there, Survey Statistician 1530 series and the Mathematical Statistician 1529 series are our main types of job series that we employ. And as well as we have student opportunities throughout the year that you can, apply for. And we generally post those jobs twice a year, and it should be posting pretty soon, actually. And then the other job series that we use uses technical statistical skills, or geographer, social scientists, and psychologists, and so forth. A whole overview. So most of the jobs are located in Suitland, Maryland, which is just a little southeast of Washington, D.C. as our main campus. And we typically have 4,000 to 6,000 employees. Our agency is very cyclical in our employment numbers, depending on the decade where we sleep those under 9 years, we go to sleep and we have a little less staff, but then during the census years, we increase our numbers up to our maximums. And that's reflected in our statistics staff as well. So some opportunities are at the regional offices. So I guess closest to the North Carolina area, or Atlanta handles the area. But you might be better served to move up to DC if you're interested in a permanent job with us. And then that's pretty much it in a nutshell for the census.
All right, Jonah, thank you for that. one of the things that you alluded to was Census Bureau's ability to contract out projects, use their apparatus to administer surveys on behalf of the Bureau of Labor Statistics or others. I just offer it to the panel here. What other types of projects or opportunities for mobility between agencies or collaborations between agencies exist?
Actually, I'll lead with that. So one of the census directors had said that around 40% of our budget overall is reimbursable from not only other agencies, but also other companies that we deal with. We have a large staff that deals with all those agreements. And, it collaborates with a lot of other agencies in order to help tailor the data that they would like to be collected in such manner. And, have all that specified.
Do you want me to chime in? Am I unmuted? Okay, good. So I think, so you did mention about BLS kind of has Census Bureau do some of our surveys for us. I would say that we also, there's opportunities to work and serve with interagency groups. So like Nathan is the chair of the CSPOS, which is Computational Statistics for the Production of Official Statistics, which is, has members who are interested in computational statistics. They can just, be part of the group. But, there's people from NSF, National Science Foundation, agriculture, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and a lot more. So I think there's several of these kind of opportunities to work with other agencies. So you don't have to work in a vacuum.
And I think that's one thing that's worth kind of discussing with the group is that we are a larger federal statistical community. Even if we are members of specific agencies or organizations, we kind of draw a lot of strength from collaboration and exchange of ideas. So there are definitely opportunities. I have the perspective of a researcher, and so it's always really valuable. But there are production-oriented things that we have to learn from each other, because 13 statistical agencies, sometimes we're solving the same problem 13 times over. So it's really a fruitful place to collaborate. We have access to a broad variety of data, and I think it's important data as well. So it can be a source of interesting problems to solve. It's an interesting working environment in the federal statistical community. I don't see any questions from the audience specifically, so maybe we'll go next to Jeff Bailey, and then we can return with questions at the end of the session. So Jeff.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, and now can you see my slides okay?
They're showing, they can go full screen.
Yep, I clicked the button. I'm waiting for it to happen. There we go. All right, everybody see the slides now? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Bailey, and I'm with the National Ag Statistics Service, which is a part of the Department of Agriculture. And I work in our Summary Estimation Disclosure Methodology branch. It's a long name. Basically, we're summarizing all the data from all of our various surveys. I personally have had so far about a 36-year career with NASS, and it's been a great place to work. And I've worked in various units within our organization in various mathematical statistician positions. So I know about the different areas in our own agency for mathematical statisticians, worked in research and sampling, and now on our summary side as well. The NASS mission, as you might imagine, is providing timely, accurate, and useful statistics in service to agriculture. So the different agencies, serve different sectors of the economy, and we service agriculture. Obviously, it's a basic thing to ensure an adequate food supply, and there's been an interest in that for many years. Many of the reports that we produce are market sensitive, and they're handled very securely until they're released to the public. Several reports feed the federal principal economic indicators, and we've recently, we're always looking, and part of our service is, emerging topics. We've been doing organic surveys recently. We've done a local food survey. We're doing an irrigation water district survey. So whatever might be emerging topics, we will do those as well. NASS has a unique history because, providing adequate food has always been of interest. One of the first surveys of agriculture was done in 1791 by George Washington. Congress did the first census in 1839, and then or 1840. USDA, Department of Agriculture, was established in 1862. There was Department of Statistics, or Bureau of Statistics, and the first crop report was released in 1863. And so we've completed our 158th year of doing crop reports. So our makeup is we're headquarters here in Washington, D.C. We do have 12 regional field offices, so roughly half our staff is probably in headquarters. Most have degrees in agriculture, math, statistics, or computer science. We do not have any political appointees, so that minimizes some political impact and changes due to political parties changing. Here is a map of our regional field offices. As you can see, they're scattered throughout the country. Some out in the west cover more land, and we do have a National Operations Center also in St. Louis, which they handle some of our call center things and forms processing, mailing, receiving forms, and things like that. So that's just our regional field office structure. Those basically where the data collection is taking place, and then summarized work is done in here in headquarters. So what does NASS do? Well, we administer the USDA statistical program, and that covers roughly maybe 120 different crops, 45 different livestock things. And you might obviously think of corn and soybeans and cows and pigs and things like that, but maybe you wouldn't think of mushrooms. We do honey production, floriculture, milk, dairy products. When I say dairy products, you can think ice cream statistics, so we even do that too. We do about 450 reports each calendar year, and there's only about 30 days of the year that we're not releasing some report. In addition to the estimating program, we do the Census of Agriculture. We do that every 5 years. As was mentioned a while ago by Jonah, we do some reimbursable work. Maybe only about 10% of our work is reimbursable work for other organizations and things like that. We're currently doing a survey on farmers markets. That's a one-time thing under a reimbursable agreement. And we provide statistical consulting for a lot of other state and federal agencies, universities, and we've done a lot with international work. We have a group of international staff that help other countries. And I've had the opportunity to travel to other countries to help consult with statistics in some other countries as well. So this chart is a response rate from our crops, acreage, and stocks production survey. As you can see, the response rates here, they start off in the lower 70s, they dip to the 60s, into the 50s, and last year we're down to the lower 50s. So I put this graph in here because I think this is one of the challenges that NASS is facing and some of the research work that we're doing, some of the work that might be doing if you came to work at NASS. So how would we deal with these following response rates? How would we adjust for non-response? How would we do that by weighting, do that by imputation, or some other method? So that's one of the challenges that NASS is facing. There's a lot more focus in NASS on improving the repeatability, efficiency, transparency, and measures of error of our surveys. And all that has been solved a lot by developing models that will pull together all available data so that we can model results and that the model results can be published and published with a measure of error. We have administrative data for some of our surveys, and so how do we mesh the administrative data, combining that with survey data to get the best available numbers and something that could be repeated. So model development has been a big push in the agency recently. Of course, there's always room for more traditional things, questionnaire development for new topics. We're also looking at increasing web reporting, so we're always needing people doing cognitive work and things like that. So there's a variety of work. This is just a few of the things. You know, we always try to match people's skills with their abilities, with the things we need, and so there's a lot of different variety of work that NASS does. Here are just the links that when you get these slides, you can make it a little easier to click on things about the NASS homepage, things about career opportunities, and there's a link to research reports that the agency has done to give you maybe more flavor of what work we have done. So that's an overview of NASS. I can turn it back to Nathan, and he'll take questions.
All right. If you're participating live, feel free to submit questions, and I'll try and moderate those. But in the meantime, let me pose a couple questions to the panelists. Jeff, I'll start with you, but then open it to the rest of the group here. We talked about the 800 or so NASS employees, and then 450 plus annual data releases. If you're trying to do research or implement some sort of change in this process, the windows are actually narrow to do that. What kinds of skills would you hope that a new researcher or new statistician has or brings to the table? And what kinds of skills, technical and non-technical, should students be trying to cultivate during their studies and interviews?
Obviously, the technical skills to do something are very important, but a lot of times that's only about half the battle, as you say, to implement something. And finding the timing and working with your colleagues is an important thing. So being able to network and interface with others and to be able to explain things and communicate are always very important in any job. So obviously communication is always going to be an important skill no matter what kind of job you have.
Do you want me to go next?
Please.
I think I agree with Jeff, and I think independent thinking is really important, because sometimes people come out of graduate school, they're so used to working with advisors and so forth that they're really being and teachers that they're kind of led by them. So it's sometimes hard, and I know I had to learn this myself, which is to kind of think of new things, think of ways to innovate, and not be afraid to let people know about those and kind of make it happen, which I think also is something that Jeff mentioned, which is being able to network, and because I think that will help with any type of innovation. So I think independent thinking is important.
Jonah, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the training programs are sufficient to inform the students of, just our beginning skills. And we have programs in place to, I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call here. Okay, pardon me. We have programs in place to help train our staff. I mean, a significant amount of our, each organization's budget is reserved to help with training. So if someone doesn't have a particular skill, they could just learn it, working with us in order to gain the skill set and in order to do the job. Because I mean, a career at Census or anywhere as a statistical agency, you can learn a variety of skills over the course of your career. So as long as you come in with, as Jeff said, communication is very important. So maybe that's a great skill to have from the get-go. not only to work with your coworkers in different projects, but also to communicate with your supervisor and sort of help yourself in your work.
Very good. So I do think it's important for students to think about ways or opportunities to improve interviewing skills. If your universities offer like mock interviews through career services, that's a great way to improve your interview skills. And communication is obviously a very valuable skill to have.
Just to continue, for example, 10 years ago, we would have said, oh, you should really know SAS, but now, Python and R are the big things. So, if you're planning for a career, the skills will come. It's just, I guess, the framework to carry the skills is probably the important thing to help set you up for success.
Yeah. That's
I'm sorry. I think one thing, Jonah, you said too, which is have a variety of skills. So I think having sort of a broad range of knowledge and interests, I think would help.
Yes.
Okay. We do have one question from Zachary Steckler here, writing about clarification for basic degree requirements. He's asking, do the 12 semester hours in mathematics and 6 semester hours in statistics need to be on the same degree? And I assume he means that, does it all have to be accounted for in, say, one bachelor's of science education or master's of science degree? And I think that answer is a definite no. Yeah. So Wendy alluded to some of the variety of backgrounds that can potentially apply for and qualify for statistics or mathematical statistics degrees. And so if you have kind of a multidisciplinary background, as Wendy would say, make sure it's clearly noted on your USA Jobs resume. I do want to add that, there are people who develop statistical acumen in, say, economics departments through econometrics courses, or, maybe you have a design of experiments background coming from agriculture or other applications. One thing that, I think about my own graduation, 6 or 7 years ago at this point, but in making sure that we satisfy our degree requirements, often your university will require some sort of like course audit in which you list the courses that you've taken, the specific electives that you've taken. And I would go ahead and just make a photocopy of that, or a Word document version of that you can copy and paste and share. One thing that Wendy mentioned is that it's probably going to human resources first as opposed to the hiring manager. So it's not always clear to the individual evaluating the resume that, chemical engineering 700 is actually a very intense, optimization course or something like that. So, having something that denotes and emphasizes your background clearly, not just like the course number, but a title, can help the individuals reviewing your resume understand what your qualifications are. And the other thing I would say is that if you apply for a job and if you have an agency point of contact listed on the USA Jobs, reach out to that individual, because it's a lot easier for us to know that somebody is applying and to make a case that they belong on the certification list. And sometimes we have those discussions with HR where we're expecting people to apply, and for whatever reason, it appears that they didn't qualify, and those things can be resolved. But that's a long answer to say that no, the basic requirements don't have to be completed on one degree, and do emphasize the things that make your background special and pertinent to the positions that you're applying for.
Yeah, I think I'm really glad you made that point, Nathan, that about the courses, because with my master's degree was engineering, and some of the classes I took were, they had like these engineering titles, but essentially they were applied mathematics. So an HR person wouldn't notice necessarily that those were mathematics. And with some of the new kind of programs in data science and the titles of the courses, it's not necessarily, the usual way we refer to them, so it's not clear necessarily to the HR people. So yeah, I think that's really important. Oh, and one other thing I meant to say, you should create your resumes, kind of tailor each one of your resumes for the job announcement, because sometimes, there's keywords, skills, and so forth that are mentioned in the announcement. So you should kind of tailor your resume to make it clear that you satisfy those requirements and you have those skills. So don't always just use one resume for everything.
That's a good point. I'm about to apply to Yuping Yu, who asks, could you be specific on the programming skills, like which ones are now mostly expected from students, like SAS, R, or Python? And I'll just kind of start the discussion and say that a range of skills is welcome and appreciated. I'll offer it to the panelists about kind of the combinations of existing infrastructure that we have, where here at NASS, a lot of our survey apparatus is entrenched in SAS. There's weather data. So we have geospatial expertise, cartographers, and spatial statistics applications. As a researcher, I often begin and even end my workday in R, but then, if your agency's vision is to see this into production, we're talking about building skill or acumen in new software, or making the things that we develop more fault tolerant or user-friendly. I think this is actually part of what we're trying to do with the computational statistics group and related work in Washington Statistical Society and things here in the federal statistical community. So let me turn it over to the panelists. I think the main point is that build a range of skills. Personally, I would like to see someone who is, strong in a particular language, who's demonstrated that they can master statistical software, and bring a willingness to learn about other systems or other softwares. And this can even be part of your further training.
Yeah, I think if you say, if somebody really needed to know SAS and they got hired, we would train them in SAS. But I think if you had a good knowledge of R or Python, then you have the programming skills. And I think once you know one, programming language, it's not too hard to switch and kind of learn something else. So yeah, I would say R or Python, either one.
Jonah or Jeff, do you have other opinions or comments?
We, in a production environment, we're still primarily a SAS shop, but, we do have a lot more R applications that are beginning to be implemented, and certainly a lot of the research is done in R.
Yeah, I'd also agree. Most of our production is in SAS, and there are other applications that we're using for with R and Python, and as well as presentation of data, Tableau and QlikView and MATLAB. I mean, those immediately come to mind as being used. I did want to step back for 1 second of one of the previous questions about applications. So on your resume, I agree with Wendy that you want to tailor your resume towards each job application, make sure you read the entire application through, just so you understand it and all the limitations it involves in the posting. But when you do tailor your resume, you want to document how many hours in total you have worked on a particular job if you have experience. And as well as your application itself, you want to submit all your transcripts. I'm so busy today. So I mean, that's, and if any of the courses on your transcript are unclear, you could submit like a copy of your course syllabus just to make it a little more clear to the analysts who are working in HR.
All right, we have another one, another question that arrived from Brendan Corretto Clark. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. But he's asking about opportunities for biostatisticians or where biostatisticians are employed within the government. Are they in multiple departments or certain departments? And I'll just start and mention that we've even hired strong biostatisticians here at NASS. So if you have an interest in survey statistics or applications in agriculture, you have a very strong background as a biostatistician that is applicable. I think one question I would pose is, what would satisfy you in terms of job requirements? And Wendy, you could probably help us list other agencies that are active in hiring biostatisticians, probably Food and Drug Administration. I imagine some of the health statistics, Health and Human Services have a broad range. But certainly if you're willing to apply your expertise in other areas, there are opportunities for biostatisticians throughout the federal statistical community.
Yeah, that's true. We have some employees here who had their degrees in biostatistics. Also, you mentioned the Food and Drug Administration, and then the NCHS, which is National Center for Health Statistics, CDC, of course. So I think, yeah, there's certainly a lot of opportunities for biostats. Yeah.
Are there specific job titles that they should look for if they're trying to make that determination? Would it typically appear as mathematical statistician or statistician within those agencies, or are there other job titles that you can think of that might help them expand their search?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know exactly the answer, but I would suspect it would be a mathematical statistician. Usually, it took me a long time to understand this distinction, but statistician is the series 1530. And usually those are people who have a degree in like economics or social science, psychology, that type of thing. At 1529, you have to have just a little bit more kind of mathematics, I guess. So if you qualify as a mathematical statistician, you would also qualify as a statistician, but not necessarily the other way. And I don't know if there's any specific like biostat career. I don't think that there's like a career label for that I know of, but I would suspect that it would be more on the math stat side.
All right, thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Are there other questions coming from the audience?
Could I ask one, Nathan?
Yes.
That is whether the agencies represented here, or maybe more broadly, encourage employees to pursue research, which would perhaps be on their own. They're pursuing their own PhD topic, and what kind of recognition that would get in government positions.
Sure, I'll offer an opinion and welcome those of the panelists as well. First of all, I am a research mathematical statistician in the Research and Development Division here at NASS. I'm often encouraged to participate in conferences, to publish in proceedings or peer-reviewed literature. And, that's one satisfying aspect of the job that I do. I think the research at NASS, and I'm sure elsewhere, ideally it's supposed to be consumed by the agency. And I think it's worth saying that there's a certain amount of risk in research and development because you can look very diligently and not find a solution, or not find a solution that's within your agency's means, or any number of other practical applications. I think it's still valuable for the federal statistical community to publish its findings or present its findings, even if it doesn't necessarily become the official statistic or have direct influence on the production processes. That's valuable insight. I would also mention that we, at least here in the DC area, we have some connections to the joint program in survey methodology. We have a number of, I have a number of coworkers, and I'm sure there are others at Census and BLS, who are degree seeking or taking additional coursework. I'll mention that I took a course for credit through JPSM in small area estimation. So I have a PhD, but didn't necessarily have that particular skill. And so that was something I acquired through additional training. And I think that especially if it augments the agency's capabilities, that the support for additional training or education, we usually fight pretty hard to meet that with a yes in some way.
Yeah, and so my office is, we're all pretty much researchers. So I agree with everything that Nathan said. Sometimes the research actually maybe goes into production and is used, but sometimes it doesn't. But it's certainly encouraged. And it's not just in my office either. Even our program office, people, depending on what they do, they have the chance to do research and then present and publish the results.
If anyone else has things to add, we'll welcome that. But we got a good question from the audience about whether whether all federal positions are required to be publicly advertised. And I think that answer is a definite yes. It can happen that, because we are compelled to publicly advertise, sometimes the posting is written with a particular individual in mind. So, there are ways that we can recruit particular expertise, but we do have to advertise, I think, by law. And you should definitely apply and try and use the contact information in the application to make your interest known.
Yeah, there's a new option now, I think, which is called direct hire. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but that's a little bit, from my understanding, that's a little bit more streamlined and kind of personal way to get hired. So you might take a look at those types of announcements too. I noticed some recently on USA Jobs.
Yes, and we actually got a question, kind of a follow-up. Are they all on USA Jobs website? And I think yes, that's going to be kind of the clearinghouse or the starting point for your application to federal jobs. I would encourage you, if you make connections at conferences, or you read publications, you can always reach out to individuals and say, hey, I kind of have an interest in the things that are going on here. Are there opportunities? And we may not have an immediate opening. I know for a fact, though, at USDA NASS right now, there are open positions within the Research and Development Division. So you could check those out even today. But I think in job seeking in general, you'll be more rewarded if you are proactive rather than kind of passively hoping for a job. And USA Jobs is kind of a clearinghouse, a necessary portal to do this, but do use available contact information, start practicing the networking with your professors, the contacts that they have to make your interest in a federal position known. I think we're coming up on the 1 o'clock hour. Jim, do you want to give any sort of farewell or follow-up instruction? And want to thank everyone for their excellent participation and questions in this session.
Well, thank you, Nathan, for moderating this. I was going to add, after the last your last comment, that NISS also has advertisements on our website for postdoc or research associate positions, which we sometimes offer jointly with government agencies, both with NASS and others. So thank you all to the panelists and for the participants. And we will post this on the NISS website under recordings of events, and it will be open to the public in a month, but this was reserved for our affiliates. So thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.